Welcome to Wisdom for Nonprofits, bringing the best business wisdom to the nonprofit world. Proven leaders share their experience, insights, and best practices. Finally, a podcast for the busy nonprofit professional. And now, your trusted advisor, Betina Pflug.
Welcome to the latest episode of the podcast Wisdom for Nonprofits, where we explore the power of being the change you want to see in the world. Our guest today is Aicila, a veteran community organizer and an executive director for two LGBTQ-serving nonprofits, who is dedicated to promoting equity and compassion in mission-driven organizations. With a passion for creating work that endures and empowering voices from diverse backgrounds, Aicila is the perfect person to speak with about the challenges facing nonprofits today and the importance of incorporating equity and compassion into our work. I'm Betina Pflug, the host of the show, and I will be exploring Aicila's experience on insights in community organizing, leadership, and creating a positive social change. So sit back and get ready for an inspiring conversation about how we can all make a difference in the world. Welcome to the episode, Be the Change You Want to See in the World. Aicila, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Oh, thank you so much, Betina, for inviting me. I really appreciate the opportunity and for being flexible with our time differences.
So Aicila is in the United States, but for sure she can contribute to any nonprofit located around the world. Aicila, what inspired you to become a community organizer and dedicate your career to mission-driven organizations?
Honestly, I would say it's something that I felt called to from the time I was very young. I was always, even in grade school, I was organizing different events around different kinds of topics. In terms of the first thing I recall organizing was a drug awareness day when I was in 6th grade. And I volunteered a lot. I volunteered at the local senior center with elders to care for them. And I also did a lot of volunteer work for parents with children with disabilities. And I don't know that it was one particular thing that inspired it. It just was more this feeling of, I could see there were places that there were needs and I felt like I could do something. And so why not do something?
So you're very active since you're younger and just continue in this vibe by dedicating yourself to special projects like this one. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think that I think it's a part of my nature, like that I feel that sense of when I see something that I can do something to make a difference around, I want to show up. And obviously you can't show up everywhere all the time. So you do have to be discerning. And one of the things that you talked about when we spoke before was you're always very careful to manage your time effectively. And that's a really big, obviously important part, because if you try to do everything, you're just going to get too tired and you won't be able to be effective anywhere. So there's definitely some places where I limit, and that is, I would say, part of why it moved into it in terms of my work, because I didn't want it to just be something I did on the weekends.
Yeah, I totally get it. Organizing the time is precious. And I see that you have an important role as executive director for LGBTQ-serving nonprofits. And how does experience as an executive director for such organizations influence your approach to community organizing?
I would say that being in a position of authority was a very special kind of responsibility. And for me, when I was working in those organizations, it was really important for me to recognize that I was serving the community, that this wasn't about me being the boss, right? I mean, I did have to be responsible and I had to make sure I was leading with integrity, but it was about really listening to the voices of my community to understand what their priorities were, and then to take that information in from obviously what the board as well. They would often participate to create a plan that actually addressed where our community was and what they needed, and to act from a place of service into what they indicated were the most important things.
That's beautiful. Yeah, being humble is so important all the time. Just a servant leader is the one who really makes a change. But can you speak to the role of compassion in effective leadership? How have you incorporated this into your work?
One of the things that I found, so I ran 2 small nonprofits, and they did a survey around probably my 5th year in my work of all the LGBT centers in the United States. And what they found was the majority of them and the majority of the staff that worked at them would end up leaving at around 12 to 18 months. And I had obviously stayed there for 5 years. And it wasn't because the pay was great or anything like that. But what I realized was that while anger ignited my interest in action, compassion was my motivation for what I did. And I feel like leading from a place of compassion rather than anger gave me a lot more energy over time. I wasn't, and there were, of course, many things to be angry about. And I'm in no way saying that people who have been oppressed and abused shouldn't be angry. However, what I found was that if my motivation for my work and my effort and the place that I sourced myself for what I did was a place of compassion, that allowed me to have a more regenerative energy and approach to the work I was doing, and therefore allowed me to sustain my efforts at a deeper level for a longer period of time.
I totally agree with you. When I'm working here as a coach, also the compassion is the main pillar of everything. Being the accountable partner for someone else, it's so different than just trying to sell a service to someone else. So as a leader, bring passion to your actions. I can totally see this can make a difference. In your opinion, what are some of the biggest challenges facing nonprofits today, and how the organizations can overcome them?
I would say white supremacy and the way that it is embedded in how we interact and engage. It destabilizes organizations from an unconscious perspective from the inside. And so while a lot of folks would maybe name like the difficulty of fundraising or the difficulty of marketing, the reality is that if we weren't dealing with the consequences of white supremacy and the ways in which that is embedded and encoded into a lot of our cultural behaviors, we wouldn't have a lot of the problems that we're trying to solve with nonprofits, and we wouldn't have a lot of the funding issues, because the extractive capitalism that is sort of the norm would not really be the way that we do business. So, and obviously that's a problem that while we all want to chip away at it, it's going to probably take a little longer to fix. I would say the next level problem is extractive capitalism and the ways in which so for example, here in the United States, the way that foundations work, they might have like a $300 million portfolio. They're required to give 3 to 5% of that money away, averaged over the course of 5 years to the organizations that they fund. But that $300 million is often invested in businesses that counteract the 3 to 5% that they give away to these organizations. And so the model itself is set up to maybe feel a little good, like someone feels like they're making some progress, but the system itself is designed to protect the wealth and success of the people who are actually doing the damage.
I totally understand what you're saying. Yes. And you do have a podcast as well called Business as Unusual, focus on empowering the other business and create a new normal. How do you see business playing a role in creating a positive social change? So not being this extractive, consumism. How do you use your consulting and your podcast to make the change that you want to see in the world?
So one of the things that I do, or one of the things that I'm working with, is there's an organization that's the nonprofit ventures, and they actually teach post-growth entrepreneurship. And if you're familiar with, like in the last, I want to say last fall, Patagonia, which is a large company in the US, they changed their business model to be a nonprofit. So they will never be able to be sold. And I mean, they're fine, right? The people who founded it have everything they need. However, they'll never get that big, rich payoff, and they're not going to make spaceships, because they shifted the way the organization is funded or structured so that the profits, the majority of the profits that Patagonia makes, will go into a nonprofit that funds environmental activism and efforts around addressing climate change issues. And the post-growth entrepreneurship program that I'm part of, and it's a Train the Trainer program, was created by a woman named Dr. Melanie Rybak. She's based in Amsterdam, and she actually set her business up almost 10 years ago. She has a cybersecurity business that she set up as a nonprofit, so that any profit above and beyond what's needed to run the company goes into that nonprofit to fund things like the post-growth entrepreneurship program and other internet initiatives that they believe in and they support. And what she talks about, and I think it's a really wise way to sort of make the distinction, is when we talk about profit in business, we usually conflate two separate concepts. One is the profit you need to invest in infrastructure and make sure you have enough money on hand to make your payroll and all of those kinds of things, bonuses for people that work there. And then the other profit, this extractive profit, is when you extract profit from either the resources around you and take it away, or from the people that work there. Like, instead of investing back in your people, you're investing in your ability to build a spaceship or whatever. And so her approach in this program is about teaching people how to set businesses up in a way that thinks about how you engage in community. And there's a number of things, like the donut economy is very popular in Europe. There's a lot of models that are about addressing this issue. And that's where the thing about it is, business can be such a powerful force for change, because the way we do business matters. And they've shown through so many different studies. For example, here in the US, there's a figure that's been bandied about, that for every dollar that you spend at a local business, $10 goes into the local economy. And so if you go down to your bookstore and you buy a book for $10, you put $100 into your local economy. But if you buy that book for $8 on Amazon, that doesn't happen. So you save $2, but your whole community loses $100. And we have to have people starting to think about the ways we're interconnected and the ways those choices, they affect us and our neighbors. So that's where I would say that business has such a power to really shift that. And there's a lot of fear that I see. People, they hear that and they're like, oh, you just want me to be poor. So no, actually, you're poor right now. You don't have sick days. You don't have a security for your future. You have tons of social problems that are created by the model that we're following. And if we followed a different model, I mean, who knows? There'll always be problems, but we'd get at least different problems. And since we know that what we're doing doesn't actually serve our communities or our people very well, we might as well try and see what different problems look like. I'd certainly be fine with solving different problems, because we've had these for a while, and they're getting worse, right? Like the forest fires, or just the wildfires all last summer here in the US, they were terrible. And the flooding that California just went through, also very terrible. And it's not isolated to the US. Everywhere in the world is experiencing intense climate issues. And there's a real connection between that and the ways that we do business that are not thoughtful of how we are part of this world. So there's that piece. And then my podcast is about highlighting people like you and other business owners who are saying, I don't accept the way I've been told it's done. I choose to come at it from a different perspective that centers human experience, that engages in sustainable behaviors and works to build a community that is successful and supports everybody.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. For example, I recently moved here to Australia, and I have so much pleasure going and buying the local markets, then going to the big supermarket chains. They do have also Costco and big changes here, but it's so nice to see the small entrepreneurs working in these markets and help them and not using the plastic bags to grab your produce. So if you can make a change and start by changing your own habits, this will impact the whole community around you. So contributing even in a small proportion can make a huge change if everybody does the same. I totally agree with you. Just needs a mindset.
Right. Well, and I do want to be clear that we have been sold on the idea that individuals can make these changes. And while I agree it's very important for people to find ways to do what they can, if only because it's a good discipline and a practice, the reality is that as long as the systems and the governments, for example, here in the US, you can't buy anything that isn't in plastic. I mean, you can, it's very difficult. And yet we don't have anything we can do with plastic, and we don't make we've never made the businesses be responsible for the plastic they produce. And so then what we see is this cycle of shame and guilt where individuals point fingers at other individuals and blame them. If you just recycled, it doesn't matter. Even if you recycle everything that you create, it's not actually going to have the biggest of impacts. What we need to do is have fewer plastics created, or plastics created out of compostable things rather than petroleum. We need to have a real infrastructure for dealing with them, and actual science education, which we lack in a lot of ways. And so I feel like it's also very important to say, yes, we all should, what we can do, we should do. And as much as we can. And yet it's also important not to feel shame or guilt, because the reality is that the system itself is not functioning in terms of our needs as humans or our needs as an earth.
Yeah, the change needs to start from us for sure. And you do have a consulting company, it's BiCurean, works with nonprofit on organization strategy development and implementation. What are some common challenges you see in organizations facing in this area, and how do you help them overcome those challenges?
So typically, I work with people who are really engaged with a passion, and they've been successful, and they are finding that usually they're at an organizational turning point, like they've achieved some level of success and scaled up, and are working to identify how to bring their business into a place of functioning more at the scale that they're at. So they started out and they kind of did everything themselves. And now they have just enough clients and new business that they can't quite do everything themselves. And they're so busy, they don't necessarily have the time to figure out what they need to do to make it work better for them. So I come in and I help them. I take on some of those tasks so that they can feel that confidence that their work is going to go forward, that their clients are going to get what they need. And as I'm doing that, I also help them identify what's the thing that they need that will be a permanent solution. Like sometimes it's me. There are a few of them that I actually work for on an ongoing basis. And sometimes it's about setting up the right levels of automation on their emails, or it's the right person in a certain position, or it's you're sort of changing their process a little bit to make sure they have a little more time, or honestly saying, I used to do this type of job, but actually it's not my favorite job. I'm not the best at it. Maybe I'll just remove this from my service list so I can focus on the things that I can bring more to the table. So I'm really good at sort of helping them identify what's going to be the best thing for their business, and also for them to be able to continue to do the work for their clients that they love, that their clients appreciate.
Looks like a dream support person.
No, I love it. I love I tell people all the time I have a weird job, because my client list is I work with a person that is a brand consultant. I work with a life coach. I work with a comedian. I work with an artist and an audiobook narrator. And that's part of why I love it, is the strategy piece isn't significantly different, but I get to learn about all these different types of work and all these different industries. And I'm a very curious person, so I'm fascinated by it.
That's so good. So you're very used to wear different hats and help them out with your support in the nonprofits, and could be regular organizations as well, not only nonprofit that you support.
Yeah, I mean, most of the people that I work with have a passion for what they're doing. So, and they have some form of mission, whether it is to support people in expressing their full potential or to work with climate activism. And so some of them, yes, are nonprofits, and some of them are for-profits. But I would say that mission, whatever that is, they all have some kind of mission or passion that they are really committed to. Because that's the exciting part for me. I get to work with people that I respect, doing work I'm good at. So that's very fulfilling, that I can wholeheartedly support their dream because I believe in what they're doing.
Wow, that's really good.
It's kind of awesome. I'm like, I don't know how this happened, but I love it.
And you have an extensive experience with LGBTQ and the cultural issues around our world nowadays. How do you think this intersectionality of these issues affect the community and the nonprofit work?
I believe personally what we're seeing, and I'm not like, a large news analyst, so however you want to take that, but I believe what we're seeing is a lot of fear. I think that the right, and I wouldn't say conservatives, because I don't think it's actually real conservatism. I think that the conservatives have been hijacked by a very radical right extremism, and they are really scared because their values and their goals are not inspiring to the public. That most people are not on board with the behavioral choices that they are trying to enforce. And so because they can't win in the court of public opinion and social influence, they are attempting to win by generating fear through misinformation and then enacting draconian laws against the human rights of citizens and honestly residents and human beings, it just to enforce their own agenda. I don't think they're a majority of our population. However, they have managed to stir up enough fear and reaction that people are responding to it. And what's happening is they're sacrificing the lives and the humanity of the transgender people in our communities. And it's honestly horrifying to me. I really did not think that this is something that was on our horizon 10 years ago. And it hurts me to see the ways in which people are being, I would say, manipulated successfully to scapegoat other humans instead of being able to see and kind of stand for their values. And I have some hope. I've seen some places where people are taking a stand for human rights. However, it's one of the things that I've talked about on my podcast and with folks is they use, for example, this idea of freedom, right? But what they talk about freedom, they usually mean people who look like them having the freedoms they approve of. So they don't actually mean freedom, they mean entitlement. And the reality is that in a democratic society, I'm not going to agree with or like everything that other people are doing. However, I get to respect their right to be in their own life the way that they want to be. And we have really seemed to lose some perspective on that.
Yeah, and talking about the impact on nonprofits, there is a nonprofit that I really, really admire. Is owned by Salesforce. So Salesforce, they have the salesforce.org. And I'm really impressed with the work they're doing of equity and bringing diversity into the organization. I recall one time they used to organize a big event with more than 10,000 people in a city, and the state had some prejudice laws over there, and they decided to no longer hold this big event in that city and change to another city that was more open-minded. I think they were very aligned with their mission, with what the impact they want to cause in the world. So I really admire the work, and I'm sure there are a lot of nonprofits that are very aligned with their values
Mhm.
and doing a
Well,
beautiful work outside.
so like just this week, there was a county in Texas that passed a ban that said that they would arrest people for dressing outside of their gender. And that's something that if you ask most Americans like about the Taliban, they would say, "Oh, it's so terrible. They make women wear hijabs." Well, this is not any different. And how is it going to be enforced? You have short hair. Are you outside your gender? If you wear jeans, is that like who's going to enforce it? It's not. And the thing is, they're not going to enforce it evenly. They're going to decide, whoever the police officer is in the moment is going to decide, this person in front of me isn't enough of the gender I think they should be. And so it's a really big deal. And there's definitely like the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union here in US, they absolutely are doing work. The NAACP, they're definitely doing work. There's a lot of groups and nonprofits for sure that are standing up, and we need more. The assault right now on the United States residents and citizenry, and the fear factor that is being amplified and fanned, is absolutely going to lead to tragedies. There's already been several, but there's going to be more if people don't get that this is not okay. It's dangerous and it's lethal.
Mhm. Yeah, if we can support as many nonprofits as we can that have an open-minded, that would be wonderful. But let's change topics. I really would like to talk a little bit more about how you leverage the organizations that you're supporting. How do you balance the need of immediate action with the long-term vision of creating a less changing in your work? Because you said you come and then you help the organizations to fulfill what's needed at the moment, but how do you help them with the long-term vision?
So I listen a lot to what they are talking about, their goals are, and then as I do the work to sort of understand what they're up to and what the possible blocks are in terms of, for example, I was working with a human who wanted very much to create something that was going to be a little more enduring in terms of their regular income. And we talked about some different ideas, and I was like, all right, so we made a couple suggestions, and then over time we were able to find something that actually fit with them. Because one of the things that I see a lot is people have an idea about what they should be doing, and it's usually something that someone told them, or they and they're not wrong in that it might be a good idea. However, if it's not an idea they would use, if it's not something they would actually enact, it's not going to work. And so part of why I like to do that work in the beginning is to get a feel for what is their best way of working, not what they think they should be doing. Like I should make a task list every day. But the reality is they're not going to make a task list every day because it's just not how their brain works. So say, okay, let's not do that. Let's find another thing that helps you to feel like you're achieving your goals, and you are actually achieving your goals, and that you have the space to get those daily things done. And like I said, those long-term things. So it's really about balancing those three things, right? It's about balancing the needs of the moment, and those and thinking about how you want to get, like, what's your long-term goal, and then what are the steps to get there. that are actually going to work for you. You know, I had a client one time who was very sold on this very expensive software, and they bought the software and they installed it and they never used it. They just paid for it every month, thousands of dollars, because while the software absolutely did what it said it would, it wasn't the right fit for them, their organization, or their personality. And so it was like, all right, let's figure out what you actually need to achieve the goal you have, and then determine how we make that happen for you, instead of everybody who is in this industry uses this software. Well, that's great, but you're not everybody. And it's clear you haven't been using it, even though you're paying for it, because there's so many pieces to it that just they're not the right fit for you. And so a lot of it is that it's a little bit of a matchmaking thing to make sure that they have that. I tell people I have 3 values that I work from: integrity, clarity, and sustainability. Integrity is the one that makes the other 2 function, right? You don't have integrity if you don't know how to make promises and keep them. Nothing else is really going to go. Clarity is about actually seeing what's happening, what you need, and what works for you without blame or judgment. And sustainability is about saying, I need to make sure that part of my daily plan and monthly plan and yearly plan is recognizing that I need resources, time, energy, and money to do things tomorrow, next month, next year. I can't spend everything right now. Like I need to have some sustainability in how I do it. And I include the CEO or the leader, I include their personal sustainability as part of that. That, you know, they need to take time off and they need to make sure they're doing things with their family so that they are regenerated when they come back.
That's beautiful. Yes, I think that's the path to go. And what advice would you give to someone who wants to be involved in?
I lost you again. Oh, there you are. I heard you say, what advice would you give? And then I lost you.
So what advice would you give to someone who wants to become more involved in the community or have a mission-driven work?
That's, I would say, 1, look around your community and look for something that you see and understand, and that you are really interested in, even when it's boring. Because most of the time, doing community work involves some tedium. And a lot of times when I was running the nonprofit, people would come in and they really wanted to go organize and give speeches, but they didn't really want to file or take out the trash. And those things are necessary. We need to do all of it. And so make sure that you really find something that, even when you have to do those boring pieces, you're still going to feel a sense of inspiration. And then do some research, do some due diligence, look for what's happening. That's the other thing I see a lot is people get an idea and they're like, oh, I'm going to start a group. And maybe you need to. I'm not saying you don't, but go kind of look around and see what's happening. Ask people who are doing the work. If you, for instance, see that there's a homeless problem in your city, go talk to people on the streets, go talk to people who are doing work to support that, and kind of try to get a sense of what's needed and what's working. I mean, maybe you will come up with a solution or a gap service that would be helpful, because you're going to identify some things that other people wouldn't. And I think that's a really important piece, instead of just jumping in because you're excited, which I understand that. And I don't want to diminish. I don't want to say don't be excited and don't jump in, but do some research to really understand what's happening and what's needed, and to give yourself some sense of like, will I stick around? Because that's the other thing is people could get excited and they'll show up for a week or a month, and then their life takes over. And that's fine, but it's not as helpful. It's better to do an hour a week for 7 years than it is to do 10 hours for 3 weeks and then disappear.
Yeah, consistency is the key when you want to make the change. And my last question to you is, what are you doing to be the change you want to see in the world?
Well, thank you. I love the Maya Angelou quote that is, do what you know until you know better, and then do better. And so I try to show up in spaces, variety of spaces in the world, and listen to what the people who are committed to that action or activity are saying is the priority, and then engage from that perspective. And I try, the other thing that I feel very strongly about is not committing to something in a way that isn't sustainable, because I do, having run multiple organizations, I really am aware of the very powerful impact a volunteer can have, and also the ways in which very good intentions can cause a real problem if you don't take the time to be very clear about what you can offer, and also learn and listen to develop the skills you need to actually be a good support to the work. Because it's, you wouldn't go to a surgeon that hadn't studied. So you probably don't want to assume that you can do diversity and inclusion work without developing some skills and understanding of white supremacy and capitalism and patriarchy. And those skills are important, which isn't to say you shouldn't step in to learn. Just recognize that there is a skill practice piece that works in that as well.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for being the person you are. I'm also trying to be the change I want to see in the world by leading by example and putting in practice everything that I inspire my coaching clients to do. So meeting someone like you, it's really nice seeing that you're doing your part, and we have a mission in our organizations. So thank you so much for sharing everything you did. And how can people engage with you, get in contact if they want to know more about your consulting or your podcast?
Well, everything's on my website, BiCurean.com, BiCurean. And I'm always happy. You can shoot me an email. I admin at BiCurean, just because it's easier than trying to spell my name. And my podcast is on there, Business is Unusual, and it's also on Apple Podcasts. And I love it if, people show up and tell me what they think. And I also do want to say, you told me a lot about how you show up with your work, and I really appreciate your example, because I think you really making it clear to people that, once again, that rejuvenation is so important. Because I feel like so many times people in nonprofit work kind of burn themselves out because they care. And then we lose so many passionate, talented people because they're too tired. And so I just love that one of the things that you do is really help people understand how to sustain themselves in the work. And thank you for having me on your show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Wisdom for Nonprofits. To hear past and future episodes, please subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast channel. We appreciate your reviews and suggestions for future show topics. If you have a question or a suggestion, please write to us at podcast@wity.tech. More resources are available for you at our website, wity.tech. And please join us in the Wisdom for Nonprofits group on LinkedIn. Wisdom for Nonprofits is copyright 2019 by Betina Pflug and wity.tech. All rights reserved.